I walked in expecting to surprise my wife with coffee. What I got instead was the sound of her crying over another man, and the moment she saw me standing there, her whole body froze. She didn't even try to hide it. Just wiped her eyes and said he got engaged. I wish I could tell you this was a dramatic misunderstanding, that I overheard something wrong or caught her mid-movie. But no. It was as clear as the tears running down her face and the ring on her phone screen. Her ex, Evan, had proposed to someone else and she was mourning it like someone had died. It was a Saturday morning, about 9:30. I'd just come back from grabbing us both a coffee, her favorite, the oat milk latte with a sprinkle of cinnamon on top. I remember thinking how lucky I was, how settled our life felt. We just hit our 3-year wedding anniversary 2 weeks ago. We weren't perfect, but who is? We had our routines, our Sunday grocery runs, little arguments over laundry, but nothing serious. I opened the front door like I always do, called out her name with that stupid sing-song voice I know she secretly likes. "Babe, caffeine delivery." No answer. I walked down the hall and that's when I heard it, the muffled sobs. Not the kind where someone stubs their toe or watches a sad TikTok. This was deep, chest-clutching grief. I followed the sound into our bedroom and stopped in the doorway. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in her pajamas, phone in her lap, face in her hands. "Are you okay?" I asked, heart racing. She looked up, startled, like I'd caught her committing a crime. Her eyes were red and puffy, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She quickly wiped at her face but didn't say anything. I sat beside her, gently placed the coffee on the nightstand. "What happened?" She didn't meet my eyes. Just whispered, "Evan got engaged." At first, I didn't process it. Evan, her ex from college. The one she said was a mess, emotionally unavailable, always disappearing when things got serious. The same Evan she claimed she hadn't spoken to in years. I blinked. "Okay, and?" She finally looked at me, eyes shining with fresh tears. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel nothing. But it hit me harder than I expected. I guess I'm mourning what could have been." That sentence didn't just knock the wind out of me. It shattered something inside. I was her what is. I was the man who held her when her mom got sick, who fixed the leaky sink in our first apartment, who knew her coffee order and how she liked her socks folded. And she was crying because someone else got engaged? She must have seen the look on my face because she grabbed my hand quickly. "No, it's not about him. It's just a weird emotional thing. Closure, I guess." I stood up. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice suddenly panicked. "To pack." Her face crumpled. "What?" "No, wait. I'm not angry," I said, somehow managing to keep my voice even. "But if you're mourning him, then I'll give you the space to grieve. Alone." She started crying harder, reaching for me, but I stepped back. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just quietly walked into the closet, grabbed a bag, and started filling it with clothes. 1 pair of jeans, 2 shirts, toothbrush. Done. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she sniffled. "It doesn't mean anything." But it did. It meant everything. Because I was here. Present. Real. And somewhere, deep inside her, so was he. As I zipped up the bag, I said the words I never thought I'd say in our marriage. "I hope you find the closure you're looking for." I really do. But I won't be the guy standing beside you while you cry over another man's ring. And with that, I walked out the door. I didn't go far. Just down the road to a cheap motel off the highway. The kind with flickering fluorescent lights and vending machines that only half work. I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding my go bag, staring at the popcorn ceiling like it had answers. The silence buzzed louder than any argument we'd ever had. She texted once. "Please come home. We need to talk." I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't even know what home meant anymore. That word used to mean comfort. A couch we picked together. A shared Spotify playlist echoing through our kitchen. Her laugh from the next room. Now all I could hear in my head was her saying, "Mourning what could have been." I tried to eat. Couldn't. I turned the TV on. Couldn't tell you what was playing. My mind replayed every conversation we ever had about Evan. Every time she brushed off questions like, "Do you still think about him?" Every time she swore it was ancient history. Was I just the next best option? The safe bet? The man she married after the guy she really wanted didn't get his act together? I stayed at that motel for 3 days. No calls. No texts. Just silence, letting it all sink in. On day 4, I finally went back. Not because I forgave her. Not because I missed her. But because I needed to look her in the eye and ask one question. Was I your second choice? When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch like she hadn't moved in days. The apartment was quiet, no TV, no music. Just her, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the floor. She looked up the moment I came through the door. "I didn't cheat on you." I nodded. I know. Her lip trembled. But I hurt you. You did. She stood up, walked toward me slowly. I didn't mean for you to find me like that. I didn't even realize I was crying that hard until I saw your face. Do you still love him? No, she said instantly, too instantly. I mean, I don't know. I loved what we were. Who I was back then. It's not about him anymore, it's about the version of myself I had to bury. I swallowed. And I'm the reminder of what you settled for? No, she said, rushing toward me. That's not what I meant. You're not a consolation prize. You're everything. You're my real life. Then why were you crying over your old one? Her face collapsed. Because I never let myself grieve it. I buried it so deep, I didn't even know it was still there. Seeing his engagement photo, it just cracked something. Cracked what? I asked. She paused. The illusion that I had fully moved on. I thought I had. I thought marrying you meant I didn't need to think about it anymore. But I guess I never actually closed that door, I just locked it and pretended the hallway didn't exist. I sat down, suddenly exhausted. Do you think we can come back from this? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she knelt beside me and whispered, I don't want anyone else but you. But if you can't trust me anymore, I'll understand. I looked at her for a long time. Her face, so familiar, so vulnerable, looked different now. Like I was seeing someone I hadn't met yet. Someone still haunted. I said nothing. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I couldn't. It felt like someone else had been there. Someone I couldn't compete with because they weren't real anymore. Just a memory. A ghost in our bed. I stayed on the couch for the next 4 nights. It wasn't a punishment. I just couldn't bring myself to climb back into a bed where the woman I loved had cried over another man. Where she whispered, mourning what could have been. That sentence had started rotting something inside me and I didn't know how to stop it. She kept her distance. Brought me coffee in the morning. Left food on the counter without saying anything. The kind of quiet you get after a funeral. On the 5th night, I found the photo. It was on her laptop, which she'd left open in the kitchen. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. I just walked past to get a glass of water and saw it there, her email open, an unsent draft, the subject line blank. The image embedded in the middle of the page. A smiling couple holding up champagne glasses. Evan and his fiancée. The caption read, officially forever ring. But what stopped me cold was the paragraph she'd typed underneath it. You always said you weren't the marrying kind. Funny how time changes people. I'm happy for you. Really. Just wish I'd heard this from you, not through someone else's post. Anyway, I'm doing fine. Married. Stable. Life's good. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like, but maybe that's just nostalgia. Take care. No send button clicked. Just sitting there. Waiting. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed wet cement. She was still talking to him. If not directly, then in her head. And that might be worse. When she came home later that evening, I was already sitting at the dining table, laptop closed in front of me. She froze. You saw it. I did. I didn't send it, she said immediately, voice trembling. But you wrote it. She nodded slowly, shame painting her face. I had to get it out. I wasn't going to send it. I swear. I just needed to say it somewhere, to someone, even if that someone was a blank page. Do you still think about him that often? No, she whispered. Not often. Just in moments. When I feel unsure. Or when I wonder who I might have been if I'd chosen differently. I leaned back, feeling like I was staring at a stranger. And what do you feel when you look at me now? She closed her eyes. Regret. But not because I chose you. Because I brought a shadow into our home and let it grow until it pushed you out. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because I was terrified I was already halfway gone. We sat in silence. Finally, I asked, do you want to save this? She hesitated. Yes. More than anything. Then prove it, I said. Delete the draft. Block him. Erase the part of your heart that still belongs to someone who didn't choose you. I already did all that, she said. Except the draft. That was the last piece. I opened the laptop and slid it across the table. She opened it, looked at the email, hovered her cursor over the trash icon. And for one awful second, I thought she'd hesitate. But she didn't. She clicked delete. The draft vanished. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. I'm here, she said softly, eyes locked on mine. Not in the past. Not with him. With you. I nodded. But something inside me whispered, she can say it all she wants. But can you believe it again? That night, I didn't go back to the couch. But I didn't hold her either. We slept on opposite sides of the bed. Not angry. Just unsure. Like two people stuck in a house they built with no idea if the foundation still held. The days after that felt like living in a house with no mirrors. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. We didn't touch dot. We just existed. And that scared me more than anger ever could. You hear people talk about emotional distance like it's some big dramatic thing, slamming doors, raised voices, walking out in the rain. But the truth is, emotional distance is quiet. It's brushing past each other in the hallway without meeting eyes. It's "I'm fine" over dinner and "good night" from opposite ends of the bed. It's silence so loud it drowns out your own thoughts. That Sunday, I went to the grocery store just to get out of the house. I didn't need anything. I just wandered the aisles, reading labels I didn't care about, pushing a half-empty cart around like a ghost. At one point, I found myself staring at the cereal boxes, and I swear I almost broke down right there in front of the Frosted Flakes. Because she used to call them sad adult candy and laugh every time I bought them. Because we used to laugh. Because I couldn't remember the last time I felt like her husband instead of her roommate. I came home to find her folding laundry in the living room. She looked up, startled to see me. Like she forgot I lived there. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. I nodded, dropped the bag on the counter. She didn't ask what I bought. We went on like that for a few more days, living parallel lives, orbiting each other without touching. And every night, I laid in bed wondering, is this what marriage becomes when the trust cracks? On Thursday, it finally broke. I walked in from work and found her sitting at the kitchen table with a photo album in her lap, our wedding album. She was holding it like it weighed 100 pounds. "I've been trying to remember how I felt that day," she said, not looking up. "Not just the smiles for the camera. The real feeling." "And?" I asked, cautiously stepping closer. She turned the page. "I felt like I was home. Like I had finally found the person who made all the noise in my head go quiet." "That person was me?" I asked. She looked at me, eyes red, face raw. "It still is." I didn't know what to say. I sat down across from her. She reached across the table and took my hand. "I will never be able to explain why that moment with Evan hit me the way it did," she whispered. "I wish I could. I wish I could rip that day out of my own memory and throw it in the trash. But I can't." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I just needed to know I wasn't a backup plan." "You're not," she said firmly. "You are the plan. You're the whole damn map." Then she said something I hadn't expected. Something that floored me. "I scheduled therapy. For myself. Starting next week." My eyebrows lifted. "You did?" "I need to understand why I held on to something that was over years ago. Why I buried pieces of myself and let them rot instead of grieving them properly. And why I hurt the person who gave me everything I never had the courage to ask for." I just stared at her. Because this wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't flowers or an apology dinner. It was real. And it was scary. And it was what I needed to hear more than anything. "I'm not okay," she said. "But I want to be. With you. If you'll have me." I reached across and squeezed her hand. "I never left because I stopped loving you," I said. "I left because I needed to protect what was left of me." She nodded slowly. "Then let me help rebuild you." That night, we sat on the couch and flipped through our wedding album together. Page by page. Memory by memory. A soft reminder of who we used to be and a fragile hope of who we still might become. We didn't fix everything. Not even close. But we talked. Really talked. And that was the first time in weeks I felt something stronger than the ache in my chest. I felt a beginning. For a while, things felt softer. Not better. Not back to normal. But there was a kind of cautious warmth between us, like we were rebuilding something from the ashes, brick by brick, afraid the next move might knock it all over again. She started therapy, just like she said. I remember the first day she came home afterward. She didn't say much, just kicked off her shoes, climbed into bed fully clothed, and whispered it hurt more than I expected. I nodded. "That means it's working." She cried. Quietly. I didn't say anything else. I just pulled the blanket over us both and let her fall asleep with her head on my chest. That was a good night, but healing isn't a straight line. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't still feel it, this dull ache in my gut every time her phone buzzed or her face fell into that faraway look. I'd never admit it to her, but I checked her social media now and then. Just to make sure Evan's name didn't pop up again. It never did. Still, it felt like a ghost followed us around the apartment. Like he was standing in the kitchen when we made dinner. Sitting at the table when we laughed. Watching me quietly every time I kissed her goodnight. Not really him, but what he represented. The question, was I ever enough? One night, we were brushing our teeth in the bathroom together, an old routine we'd started doing again. She spit, rinsed, then looked at me through the mirror. "You haven't said it yet," she said. I froze, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. "Said what?" "That you forgive me." I met her eyes. And for a second, I didn't know what to say. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I had. I'm trying, I said honestly. But I don't know if I'm there yet. She nodded. Okay, I can live with trying. That was the thing. She didn't push. She didn't demand. She just kept showing up, doing the work, taking accountability, trying to meet me in the places I was still bleeding. And I kept showing up too. Not out of obligation, but because even after all of it, I still loved her. We made small changes. Date nights came back, awkward at first, then easier. We started journaling together, answering one prompt a week. Things like, what scares you the most about us, and what do you need more of? We fought sometimes, sure. Real fights. The kind you have when you're raw and rebuilding. But they ended in truth, not silence. And that alone felt like progress. One Saturday afternoon, she found me in the garage, organizing old boxes, trying to feel useful. She walked up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and rested her head between my shoulder blades. I didn't just mourn Evan, she said, out of nowhere. I mourned the version of myself that didn't choose you fast enough. And that's a grief I'll carry until you don't have to anymore. That was the first time I cried. Because for all the pain she caused, she finally saw the pain I had been carrying too. We didn't need a grand forgiveness moment. We needed small, honest ones layered in days, repeated through effort. And that moment in the garage, with dust on my hands and her arms around me, was the closest we'd come to finding peace. Not the kind that forgets. The kind that learns to live alongside the scar. It was a Monday. The kind of morning that doesn't try too hard, gray skies, gentle breeze through the kitchen window, the kind of weather that makes you feel like the world's finally done shouting. She was in her hoodie, barefoot, dancing around the coffee pot with her hair pulled up in a lazy bun, humming some old Fleetwood Mac song that didn't even match her usual playlist. And I just watched her. It had been 6 weeks since the day I walked out. 6 weeks since she said she was mourning what could have been, and I said nothing, packed my bag, and gave her the silence she claimed she needed. I came back, eventually. Moved back in. Put my bag in the closet. Slept in our bed. 8 meals across from her. But some part of me, call it pride, call it fear, still hadn't come all the way home. Until that morning. Something about the way she turned to me, coffee in hand, eyes soft, no mask, just her. Present. Not full of guilt. Not overcompensating. Just there. That was the moment something shifted. You're staring, she said, raising an eyebrow. I know, I said. It's just, this is the first time it's felt real. Like we're us again. She smiled, sad but honest. You mean, not tiptoeing around each other? Not afraid of ghosts in the room? Exactly. She slid into the chair across from me. No makeup. Just her tired eyes and that familiar crease in her forehead when she's nervous but trying to hide it. She wrapped her hands around her mug and said something I hadn't expected. I've been reading the emails I wrote to myself, she said. I blinked. Emails? Yeah, she shrugged. Instead of writing to Evan or to you, I started writing drafts to myself. Every day after therapy. Just thoughts I didn't know how to say out loud. I didn't know what to say. I just waited. There's this one from 2 weeks ago, she continued. I wrote, you chose Evan once. But you chose him because he didn't ask you to grow. You chose your husband because he did. And every day you have to choose him again. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She looked up, her voice steady. I've been choosing you every day, even when it hurt. Even when you couldn't see it. I swallowed the knot in my throat. I know. I reached out and touched her wrist, just barely, like I was asking for permission to come closer. She didn't flinch. Do you still miss him? I asked quietly. I need the truth. She didn't even blink. No. I miss the version of myself I thought I was with him. But that version was a lie. I didn't even know who I was back then. I do now. Because of this. Because of you. She stood up and walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders from behind. I leaned into her touch, closed my eyes. You know, I said, people talk about forgiveness like it's a one-time thing. But I think it's a process. Like laundry. You keep doing it even when it's exhausting. She laughed. Terrible metaphor. Fair. We spent the rest of the morning cleaning out the second bedroom, what used to be her home office, and the place where she'd cried over Evan's engagement. It felt weird, sacred almost, peeling back the layers of that space. The discarded journals. The photo frames turned face down. The little pile of sticky notes with half-thoughts scribbled in the margins. I want this to be our space, she said suddenly. A shared studio. Not somewhere we hide. We painted the walls 2 weekends later. A pale blue. Calming. Clean. Like forgiveness in a color. Months passed. Seasons changed. Therapy became routine. So did talking. So did laughing. And something beautiful happened. The ghost of Evan faded. Not because we banished him, but because we stopped feeding him. We built new memories in place of the old ones. Imperfect, messy, real memories. Dinners burned. Inside jokes formed. Arguments still happened, but they ended with apologies, not avoidance. One night, about 8 months later, I found a note in my sock drawer. Just a torn page from a notebook. Nothing fancy. Her handwriting, messy from rushing. This morning, I realized I haven't thought about him in weeks. But I think about you every day. That has to mean something. That does mean something. I kept that note. Taped it to the back of our closet door where no one sees it but me. Because that's what love looks like now, not a fairy tale, not a clean slate, but a choice we both keep making. Even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days. So yes, I walked out that day. I let her cry. Let her grieve. Let her sit in the ashes of what might have been. But when I walked back in, I didn't come home to the same woman I left. I came home to one who was finally ready to stay.